Millionaire wife scared everyone, until the new waitress made her look ridiculous and ashamed. Security escorts a young black man toward the exit, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs as he strips off his uniform. Behind him, a woman in a crimson dress touches her diamond bracelet and smiles, the same bracelet she just accused him of coveting with his eyes. 4 or 5 years, Becky Bryant turned an upscale Atlanta restaurant into her personal hunting ground. Nobody dared to challenge her. Nobody even tried. Until the day a waitress with a law degree decided enough was enough. This is a true story of how one woman exposed a monster, not with violence or revenge, but with evidence, with documentation, with the one thing bullies fear most, the truth spoken out loud. And I promise you, by the end of this story, you'll never look at polite society the same way again. This is a story about standing up. No, it's about something even more powerful than that. Stay with me. Welcome to Gadgula Stories. While you're here, please hit the subscribe button and comment your view on the story and where you're watching from. Let me tell you a story about power, about silence, and what happens when someone finally says enough. In the heart of Atlanta's Buckhead district, there was a restaurant called the Belmont Club. Not just any restaurant. Mind you, this was the kind of place where memberships were inherited like family heirlooms, where a single meal could cost more than most people earn in a week. Vintage chandeliers hung from vaulted ceilings, casting golden light over white tablecloths so crisp they looked like fresh snow. Even the air tasted expensive, perfume and aged wine and old money. And in this world of privilege and whispered conversations, there was one name that made everyone go still. Becky Bryant. She was the wife of Edward Bryant, a real estate millionaire who owned half the luxury developments in Georgia. His money built towers that pierced the skyline. But Becky, she built something different. She built an empire of fear. Every Friday evening at 7 o'clock, she would arrive, always in the same corner booth, table 7, always dressed like she was attending a charity gala, and always ready to destroy someone's evening, someone's dignity, someone's entire livelihood if they dared to displease her. The staff would literally tense when she walked through those doors. They'd seen what she could do. There was Jerome, a young man saving money for community college, fired on the spot because she claimed he'd been eyeing her jewelry with too much interest. He'd only been clearing her table. She didn't just get him fired. She watched him cry as security escorted him out, watched him hand over his uniform with shaking hands. And according to everyone who was there that night, she smiled. That small, satisfied smile of someone who just won a game nobody else knew they were playing. That's the kind of person Becky Bryant was. Now, into this world walked a woman named Clara James. Clara was 28 years old, and 3 months ago, her entire life had collapsed. She'd been working as a civil rights attorney for the Southern Justice Initiative, one of Atlanta's most respected legal nonprofits. She loved that job. She was good at it, too, prosecuting discrimination cases, finding patterns in workplace violations, building arguments that seemed impossible to defend against. She'd won a major settlement against a construction company for systematic wage theft just 6 months before everything fell apart. But then the organization lost its primary grant funding. Budget cuts, they said. Her entire department eliminated in a single board meeting. And just like that, her dream was gone. So there she was, adjusting the stiff collar of a waitress uniform, trying to remember which side to serve from, feeling like she'd fallen from the sky and landed in a completely different universe. A universe where her law degree didn't matter, where her courtroom skills were useless, where she was just another server trying to make rent. On her first day, a veteran server named Marcus pulled her aside during the pre-shift meeting. Marcus was 42, had worked at the Belmont for 12 years. His face showed every one of those years, the forced smiles, the swallowed pride, the quiet indignities. "See that booth?" he whispered, pointing to the corner of the dining room. "Table 7. That's where she sits." Clara followed his gaze. "Who?" "Becky Bryant, wife of Edward Bryant, the real estate guy. You know him, right?" Clara nodded. Everyone knew Edward Bryant. His name was on half the buildings in Atlanta. His developments were changing the city's skyline. "Well, his wife," Marcus continued, his voice dropping even lower. She's our worst nightmare. One wrong move, one tiny mistake, and she'll have you fired. And she won't stop there. She'll make sure you never work at a decent place in the city again." He paused, meeting Clara's eyes. "I've watched her destroy people just because she could." Clara felt something twist in her stomach. Is she really that cruel? Marcus's laugh was bitter, empty. 2 months ago, she accused a server of breathing on her food. The girl was standing 3 feet away, just waiting for the next course. Becky made such a scene, claimed she was being deliberately disrespected, that the girl was fired before dessert was even served. Last I heard, she had to move back to Macon because she couldn't find work anywhere else in Atlanta. That evening, Clara watched Becky Bryant arrive. She moved through the Belmont's entrance like Southern royalty entering her court. Her dress was crimson, bold, expensive, designed to command attention. Diamonds sparkled at her throat and wrists, cold and brilliant under the chandeliers. But it was her eyes that Clara noticed most. They were pale blue, sharp, calculating. They swept across the dining room like searchlights, and Clara could actually see people flinch. Staff members suddenly finding urgent tasks in other sections, managers straightening their ties, staffs moving with exaggerated care. Becky's husband, Edward, walked beside her. He was tall, distinguished, with silver at his temples and the kind of expensive suit that whispered wealth rather than shouting it. But he looked uncomfortable, tired, like a man who'd learned that silence was survival, like a man trapped in a beautiful prison of his own making. Claire was assigned to work Section B that night, close enough to Table 7 to observe, but not close enough to serve. She watched, and she couldn't help herself. Her attorney's brain was already working, already cataloging, already looking for patterns. For the first hour, she focused on her own customers, trying to master the complicated choreography of fine dining service. But she couldn't stop observing Becky's performance. And it was a performance. Becky sent back her wine, claiming it had a certain roughness that's simply unacceptable. The sommelier was Marcus. Clara saw his jaw tighten as he apologized and brought another bottle. She complained that the background music was too urban. It was Miles Davis classic jazz, the same music that had been playing all week. When Marcus approached to refill her water, she visibly recoiled. "Personal space, please," she announced, loud enough for the adjacent tables to hear. "I don't appreciate being hovered over." Marcus stepped back, murmured an apology, his face carefully blank. But Clara saw the humiliation in his eyes, the practiced swallowing of pride. Then came the moment that changed everything. A nervous young server, named Alicia, was working the table next to the Bryants. She was 19, in her second week, still learning the rhythms of high-end service. As she leaned in to place a dessert in front of a customer, her sleeve, just for a fraction of a second, passed above the edge of Becky's bread plate. She didn't touch it. Wasn't even close. The bread plate was still pristine, untouched. But Becky recoiled like she'd been assaulted. "Excuse me." 2 words. That's all it took to make the entire section go silent. Alicia froze, her face draining of color. "Yes, ma'am." "Do you see what you just did?" Becky's voice was soft, controlled, but it cut through the quiet like a blade. "Your sleeve was over my plate, over my food. It's contaminated now. Completely contaminated." She pushed her barely touched bread plate away with one finger, like it was garbage, like it had been poisoned. The floor manager appeared within seconds, apologizing profusely, offering to replace everything, to comp the meal, whatever Mrs. Bryant needed. But Becky wasn't finished. "I don't want a replacement. I want her." She pointed directly at Alicia. "Removed from my sight. I will not be served by someone with such blatant disregard for hygiene standards." Alicia stood there, trembling, looking like someone facing execution. Her eyes were filling with tears. She was going to be fired. Everyone knew it. Clara watched the entire scene unfold. This wasn't about hygiene. This wasn't about standards or food safety. This was about power. This was a public execution designed to remind everyone in that dining room of their place in Becky Bryant's world, above or below her. And it was a reminder that she could destroy someone's livelihood on a whim, for sport, because she could. But as Clara stood there with a water pitcher in her hands, Watching this cruel performance, she felt something familiar ignite in her chest. It was the same fire she'd felt in courtrooms when she'd watched corporations try to bully workers who couldn't afford lawyers. The same anger that burned when she saw someone abusing power against people who had no way to fight back. Marcus had called this place a hunting ground. He was right, but what he didn't know, what none of them knew yet, was that Clara James had spent 4 years of her life learning how to hunt the hunters. She knew how to find patterns in cruelty. She knew how to build cases that seemed impossible to prove. She knew how to turn whispered testimonies into courtroom evidence. And this hunter, she suspected, had left a trail that led somewhere dark. But before Clara could do anything, she had survived this place. She had to learn its rhythms, earn its trust, and most importantly, she had to stay invisible long enough to see everything clearly. Because if there was one thing her years as an attorney had taught her, it was this: bullies always make mistakes. They always leave evidence. You just have to know where to look. And Clara James knew exactly where to look. That night, Clara couldn't sleep. She lay in her cramped studio apartment, so different from the office she used to have, with its view of downtown and her name on the door, staring at the water-stained ceiling. Her feet ached. Her pride ached worse. But her mind wouldn't stop working, replaying everything she'd witnessed, cataloging it the way she used to catalog evidence, the way Becky's complaints always targeted the same servers, the way her voice changed, became louder, more performative, when there was an audience, the careful selection of words that gave her plausible deniability. I'm not comfortable. It feels inappropriate. I just have standards. Clara had heard this language before, in depositions, in discrimination cases where companies are behind policies and concerns while systematically targeting employees based on race. This was the same playbook, just wearing a designer dress. Over the next 2 weeks, Clara did what she'd always done best. She listened. During the slow afternoon hours, in the staff break room that smelled of burnt coffee and exhaustion, she absorbed their stories. Not as gossip, but as testimony, as evidence. Marcus told her about the time Becky complained his cologne was overwhelming. He hadn't been wearing any. A server named Shanice recalled being told her natural hair looked unkempt despite following every grooming policy. DeAndre, one of the busboys, had been accused of lurking while clearing a table. He'd been 6 feet away, doing his job. Each story followed the same pattern. Black staff members. Vague complaints that couldn't quite be proven false. Edward Bryant, sitting there as witness to his wife's discomfort. And always, the threat of termination hanging in the air like smoke. Clara started taking notes in a small journal she kept in her locker. Dates, times, specific language used, witnesses present. It was instinct, muscle memory from her legal days. One Tuesday morning, Marcus noticed. "What are you doing over there? Writing a novel?" Clara looked up, offered a small smile. Something like that. Just keeping track of things. She didn't tell him she was building a case file. Didn't tell him that her attorney brain had already identified this as a pattern of discriminatory conduct, that she was documenting a hostile work environment, that she could probably build a lawsuit if she wanted to. But a lawsuit would take years, cost money she didn't have, and it would only address the restaurant, not the woman herself. No, Clara was looking for something bigger, something that would expose Becky Bryant completely. Because bullies like her, people who built empires of fear and wrapped cruelty in expensive clothes, they always had secrets. They always had something they were hiding. Clara just had to find it. On her 3rd Friday at the Belmont, Clara was assigned to Section C, close enough to Table 7 to observe, but not close enough to serve. Perfect positioning for what she needed to do. When Becky Bryant arrived that evening, Clara was ready, while her hands went through the motions of service, refilling water glasses, taking orders, clearing plates. Her mind was doing something entirely different. She was watching, documenting, building a case the way she used to in courtrooms. The performance began almost immediately. Becky sent back her wine after a single sip, her voice carrying across the quiet dining room. This has a certain roughness that's simply unacceptable. The sommelier who'd selected it was Marcus. Clara watched his jaw tighten as he apologized, his eyes never quite meeting Becky's as he retreated. 20 minutes later, Becky summoned the floor manager. The music is too urban. It's making me uncomfortable. Clara glanced at the sound system. Miles Davis. Classic jazz. The same playlist that had been running all week, without complaint. When Marcus returned to refill her water, Becky physically recoiled, her hand fluttering to her chest. "Personal space, please," she announced loudly enough for 3 nearby tables to hear. "I don't appreciate being hovered over." Marcus stepped back immediately, murmuring apologies. But Clara saw the humiliation in the set of his shoulders, the practiced blankness of his expression. This was a man who'd learned to swallow his dignity just to keep his job. Clara's hands tightened around her water pitcher. She'd seen this before in depositions, in harassment cases. The careful language, the plausible deniability, the way cruelty could hide behind standards and personal comfort. Then came the moment that crystallized everything. Alicia, a nervous 19-year-old who was working her way through Georgia State, was serving the table adjacent to the Bryants. As she leaned in to place a dessert plate, her sleeve passed above, not touching, not even close, the edge of Becky's bread plate. Becky recoiled like she'd been struck. "Excuse me." 2 words. That's all it took to make the entire section go silent. "Do you see what you just did?" Becky's voice was soft but lethal. "Your sleeve was over my plate, over my food. It's contaminated now. Completely contaminated." She pushed her barely touched plate away with 1 finger. Her face twisted in exaggerated disgust. Manager Hutchins appeared within seconds, apologizing, offering to remake everything, to comp the meal. But Becky waved him off. "I don't want a remake," she announced, her pale blue eyes fixed on Alicia's trembling form. "I want her removed from my sight." Alicia stood frozen, tears gathering in her eyes. Clara could see her hands shaking. And Clara understood. This wasn't about hygiene. This wasn't about standards or personal space or any of the carefully chosen words Becky used. This was about power, about public humiliation, about reminding everyone in this dining room exactly where they stood in Becky Bryant's world. But Clara noticed something else, something that made her blood run cold. Becky only did this to black staff members. The white servers moved freely around her table without comment. This wasn't random cruelty. This was targeted, calculated, systematic. Standing there with her water pitcher, watching Alicia fight back tears while Becky sat there with that small, satisfied smile, Clara felt something ignite in her chest. The same fire that used to burn in courtrooms when she faced down corporations that exploited workers. The same rage that drove her to build impossible cases. Marcus had called this place a hunting ground. He was right. But Clara James had spent 4 years learning how to hunt hunters. That night, Clara lay in her tiny apartment staring at the ceiling, her mind refusing to quiet. She kept seeing Alicia's face, that look of pure terror, the trembling hands, the tears she'd fought so hard to hold back. Clara had seen that look before in courtrooms, on the faces of workers who'd been ground down by people with power and no conscience. Her law school professor's words echoed in her head. The cruelest people build the most fragile houses. Find a crack. Becky Bryant had cracks. Clara could sense them. She just had to find them. Over the next 2 weeks, Clara did what she did best. She investigated. During slow afternoon shifts, in the staff break room that smelled of burnt coffee and exhaustion, she listened, not to gossip, but to testimony, to evidence. The stories came slowly at first, then faster as trust built. Marcus told her about the time Becky had complained his cologne was overwhelming. He laughed bitterly. "I wasn't wearing any cologne that day, but she made such a scene," said she was sensitive to strong scents, "that I had to go home and change my entire uniform." Shanice, who'd worked there for 3 years, recalled being pulled aside by management. Mrs. Bryant said my hair looked unkempt. I had it in a professional bun. Same style I wore every day. But suddenly it was distracting. DeAndre, one of the busboys, had been accused of lurking inappropriately while clearing a table. "I was 6 feet away," he said quietly, "just doing my job." But she said I made her uncomfortable, said I was standing too close. Mr. Hutchins had to reassign me to a different section permanently. Each story followed the same pattern. Black staff members. Vague, unprovable complaints. Edward Bryant sitting there as silent witness to his wife's discomfort. Clara documented everything in a small journal. Dates, times, exact quotes, witnesses present. It was instinct, muscle memory from her attorney days. Document everything. Build the timeline. Find the pattern. Marcus caught her writing one afternoon. "What are you doing?" "Writing a book." Clara looked up, smiled slightly. Something like that. Just keeping track. She didn't tell him she was building a case file, but the restaurant was only part of the story. Clara's instincts told her there was something bigger, something Becky was hiding behind her carefully constructed image. One quiet Tuesday, Clara took her laptop to a coffee shop and started digging. She began with basic searches. Becky Bryant, Atlanta, society pages loaded. Charity galas, art openings, fundraisers. Becky in designer gowns, always smiling, always perfectly posed. Her Instagram was a carefully curated showcase. Philanthropist, art supporter, devoted wife. The image was flawless. Too flawless. Then Clara found the charity, Bryant Foundation for Urban Youth. Becky's Instagram was full of posts about it. So proud to award another $250,000 in scholarships to deserving students. These young people are our future. Hashtag giving back, hashtag urban youth, hashtag Bryant Foundation. Photo after photo of smiling black and brown teenagers holding oversized checks. Hundreds of comments praising her generosity, her commitment to giving back to the community. Something felt wrong. The staging was too perfect. The language too performative. Clara pulled up Georgia's nonprofit database. The foundation existed, established 5 years ago, right around the time Becky's restaurant reign of terror had begun. Tax returns showed millions in donations. The website claimed $2.3 million distributed in scholarships over 5 years, with 30-plus recipients listed by name and photo. Everything looked legitimate, but Clara's instincts were screaming. She clicked on one recipient's profile. Marcus Johnson, 2021 recipient. $15,000 scholarship to Morehouse College. Then she did what any good attorney does. She verified. She ran a reverse image search on Marcus Johnson's photo. The image appeared on a completely different Instagram account. A student in California. Different name. Different school. No connection to any Bryant Foundation. The photo had been stolen. Clara's heart pounded as she clicked on another recipient. Then another. Every single one. Stolen photos attached to fake names. She found the crack. Clara spent every free moment of the next week investigating. Between shifts after closing, during her days off, her tiny apartment became a makeshift war room. Laptop open, notebook spread across her bed, the kind of focus intensity she used to bring to major cases. She cross-referenced all 32 scholarship recipients listed on the foundation's website. One by one, she tracked them down through social media, student databases, university records. She used every technique from her legal days: skip tracing, reverse image searches, public records requests. The truth was devastating. Not a single recipient was real. Every photo had been stolen from social media accounts. Fake names attached to real faces. Real students who never received a scholarship, never even heard of the Bryant Foundation. Clara contacted 5 of them directly, carefully crafting emails that claimed she was verifying scholarship records for an audit. Every response was the same: confusion, denial, and in 2 cases, outright shock that their photos were being used without permission. "That's identity theft," one student wrote back. "I never applied to any Bryant Foundation. Who are these people?" Clara's hands shook as she typed her responses, keeping them vague, non-committal. She wasn't ready to reveal what she'd found. Not yet. Next came the money trail. Using her still valid legal credentials, Clara filed a Freedom of Information request for the Foundation's detailed tax returns. The basic financials were publicly available, but she needed deeper access: the schedules, the itemized expenditures, the supporting documentation. When the records arrived, she spent an entire weekend analyzing them. Donations poured in steadily. for $150,000 annually on average. Corporate sponsors, private donors, charity gala proceeds. All legitimate, all documented. But the money going out? That was where things got murky. Vague line items, scholarship distributions, program development, administrative expenses. No names, no specifics, nothing that could be verified. Clara called a former colleague who'd moved to the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. They'd worked together on a wage theft case 2 years ago. She kept the conversation casual, hypothetical. What are the red flags you look for in nonprofit fraud? He told her about offshore accounts, shell companies, and the reporting requirements most people didn't know existed. Clara went back to the Foundation's records with new eyes. There was buried in supplementary schedules, foreign bank accounts in the Cayman Islands. The explanation read, International Program Development. But the Foundation had no international programs. The website mentioned nothing. The tax returns claimed nothing. Clara dug deeper, pulling wire transfer records through legal databases she still had access to. The pattern emerged like a photograph developing in solution. Large donations entered the Foundation's primary account. Within weeks, wire transfers moved money to the Cayman accounts. Then, smaller transfers, carefully structured to avoid reporting thresholds, moved from the Caymans to a personal account. An account in the name Rebecca Sutton, Becky's maiden name. Clara sat back, her heart pounding. The Foundation was a funnel. Becky was embezzling donations meant for underprivileged children, laundering them through offshore accounts, using her husband's name and reputation as cover. But what about Edward? Clara checked his business filings, corporate records, public statements. His signature appeared on the Foundation's original formation documents from 5 years ago, standard for a spouse creating a family charity. But every document after that, signed solely by Becky as executive director. Donor interviews mentioned Mrs. Bryan handles all the philanthropic work. Edward appeared in photos but gave no quotes, no statements about the Foundation's mission. He didn't know. Clara was certain. She sat in her apartment, looking at the evidence spread before her. Systematic workplace racism, tax fraud, embezzlement, identity theft, wire fraud across state and international lines, multiple federal crimes. Becky Bryan hadn't just been bullying staff. She'd been stealing from the very community she pretended to help, using their faces as props in her performance of generosity. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. Clara copied everything to an encrypted drive. She filed reports with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the Georgia Attorney General's office, including every document, every wire transfer, every stolen photo. But she didn't stop there, because Becky Bryant needed to face this publicly, in the same space where she'd humiliated so many people, where she'd built her empire of fear. Clara opened her calendar. Friday night was 3 days away. Time to plan. The days leading up to Friday felt like holding lightning in her hands. Clara moved through the Belmont with heightened awareness, every interaction charged with anticipation. She was carrying a secret that could destroy Becky Bryant, and the weight of it was simultaneously crushing and empowering. For the first time since losing her job at the Southern Justice Initiative, she felt like herself again, not a waitress learning which fork goes where, an attorney preparing for the biggest case of her life. She spent Tuesday night organizing everything with meticulous precision. On her phone, she created a digital folder containing every piece of evidence. Wire transfer records showing the Cayman account movements, screenshots of fake scholarship recipients alongside their real identities, the IRS complaint receipt with its case number, confirmation from the Georgia Attorney General's office. Everything time-stamped, everything verified, everything documented. She practiced presenting it in her bathroom mirror. Clear, calm, devastating. The way she used to deliver closing arguments. Wednesday evening, during a lull in the dinner service, Marcus found her in the kitchen reviewing something on her phone. She didn't hear him approach until he spoke. "You've been different lately," he observed quietly. "Focused, like you're planning something." Clara looked up at him, studying his face. 12 years of swallowed dignity, of practiced humiliation. She made a decision. "Marcus, I need to ask you something." And I need you to trust me. Always, he said without hesitation. Friday night, when Becky comes in, I need you to record everything that happens at her table. Keep your phone in your apron pocket. Camera facing out, audio recording. She's going to target me. I'm going to make sure of it. And when she does, when she shows everyone who she really is, I need it documented. Marcus stared at her. Clara, what are you planning? Justice, she said simply. I'm planning justice. For a long moment, Marcus was quiet. Then his voice dropped, became something raw and painful. My nephew applied to her foundation 2 years ago. He was perfect for it. Straight as, volunteering at the community center every weekend, wanted to study engineering at Georgia Tech. He never heard back, not even a rejection letter. His jaw tightened. I watched him cry because he thought he wasn't good enough, because he thought he'd failed somehow. His eyes met Clara's, and there was steel in them now. If she's been lying about those scholarships, if she's been stealing... She has been, Clara confirmed quietly. All of it. Every single scholarship is fake. Marcus's hands curled into fists. I'll record everything. Every single word. Thursday night, Clara barely slept. She lay in the darkness, running through scenarios. How Becky might react. What she might say. Every possible contingency. The evidence was solid, ironclad, federal crime level solid. But the confrontation had to be perfect. Public enough that Becky couldn't dismiss it. Witness enough that there'd be no denying it. Dramatic enough that it would end this reign of terror forever. Friday morning. Clara dressed with deliberate care. Her waitress uniform pressed to razor-sharp perfection. Hair pulled back professionally. But underneath her white button-down, she wore the blazer from her attorney days, a hidden reminder of who she really was. She looked at herself in the mirror. Today, she told her reflection, a bully learns that silence isn't forever. Clara arrived at the Belmont 2 hours early. She walked through the dining room, studying the layout with tactical precision. Table 7, Becky's corner booth, was in full view of 15 other tables. Perfect. Marcus arrived, caught her eye across the room, gave her a small nod. His phone was fully charged, ready. Mr. Hutchins posted the evening reservations on the board. 7 p.m., Bryant party of 2, table 7. Everything was aligned. Clara took a deep breath, feeling her heartbeat steady and strong. The trap was set. Now she just had to wait for the monster in red. At 7 p.m. exactly, the doors opened. Becky Bryant entered in a crimson dress more dramatic than usual. Silk that caught the light like fresh blood, cut to command attention. A diamond bracelet glittered on her wrist, throwing prismatic light across the walls. Edward walked beside her, his discomfort more visible than Clara had ever seen it, like a man walking toward his own execution. They were seated at table 7. The restaurant tensed, the way it always did. Conversations dropped to murmurs. Staff members found urgent tasks in distant sections. Mr. Hutchins approached Clara, his voice low. Table 7 tonight. You've been doing well. Steady under pressure. Clara nodded, her face perfectly calm. Yes, sir. Across the room, she saw Marcus's eyes widen. He understood. This was it. Clara smoothed her apron and walked toward table 7. Every step measured, professional, perfect. She could feel eyes on her. Staff members who sensed something was different tonight. Diners who'd witnessed Becky's cruelty before. Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. Bryant. My name is Clara, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Becky's pale blue eyes swept over her, assessing, calculating. There was a flicker of something. Recognition that this server was different somehow. New. Unflinching. Water, Becky said curtly. Still, no ice, lemon not lime. Of course, Mrs. Bryant. Clara executed every detail with flawless precision. She knew this performance had to be perfect, had to give Becky nothing legitimate to criticize, nothing to grasp onto. Yet, throughout the meal, Becky tried to find fault anyway. She sent back her wine. This temperature is unacceptable, even though it was perfect. She complained about the table positioning. Despite sitting in her usual spot, she critiqued the music. First too loud, then too quiet, forcing the manager to adjust it twice. Each complaint was met with professional grace from Clara, which seemed to frustrate Becky more. Edward barely spoke, just worked steadily through his scotch, looking more miserable with each of his wife's manufactured grievances. Clara served the main course, perfectly plated, the chef's special presentation. As she placed Becky's plate, their eyes met for just a moment. Clara saw it clearly. Becky had decided this waitress needed to be broken. 10 minutes passed. Clara circulated to other tables, always visible, always professional. Across the room, Marcus positioned himself nearby, phone tucked in his apron pocket, recording light hidden but active. Clara returned to table 7. "How is everything this evening?" Becky looked up, and there was triumph in her eyes, the look of a hunter who'd found her prey. "Actually," she announced loudly enough for nearby tables to hear, "there's a problem." The conversations around them stopped. The section went quiet. "My bracelet." Becky gestured to her bare wrist. "My diamond bracelet. It was right here on the table when we sat down." She paused for effect, her voice rising. "And now it's gone." Clara stood perfectly still, her face neutral. Becky rose to her feet, her voice now carrying across the entire dining room. "I want this restaurant searched. Immediately." She pointed directly at Clara, her finger like a weapon. "And I want her searched. She's the only one who's been near our table. She was standing very close when she served our food. Too close." Her pale eyes swept the watching crowd. "I think we all know what happened here." The implication hung in the air like poison. Clara James, the black waitress, was being accused of theft, of stealing a diamond bracelet worth more than most people earned in a year, in front of the entire restaurant. Exactly as Clara had known she would be. The restaurant was frozen, every eye fixed on the scene unfolding at table 7. Mr. Hutchins rushed over, his face pale. "Mrs. Bryant, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding." Becky cut him off sharply. "My $45,000 bracelet is missing, and she's the only one who came near enough to take it." She turned to Clara, her voice dripping with cold satisfaction. "Empty your pockets. Now." This was a moment Becky lived for. Public humiliation, absolute power, watching someone break in front of an audience. But Clara didn't panic, didn't cry, didn't plead, didn't even look scared. Instead, she reached into her apron, but she didn't pull out a bracelet. She pulled out her phone. Her posture shifted, shoulders back, chin up, feet planted. The careful deference of a waitress disappeared. In its place stood something else entirely. The attorney emerged. "Mrs. Bryant," Clara said, her voice calm but carrying across the silent dining room. "Before we discuss your missing jewelry, I think we need to discuss something else." She paused, let the silence build. "Let's talk about missing money." Becky's face flickered. Confusion, then the first shadow of alarm. "Specifically," Clara continued, "let's talk about the Bryant Foundation for Urban Youth." At the foundation's name, Edward's head snapped up. Clara pulled up her phone, began reading with the measured calm of a prosecutor delivering evidence. "Your foundation claims to have awarded $2.3 million in scholarships over 5 years. That's very generous. That's over 30 students whose lives you've changed." She looked up, met Becky's eyes. "Except I contacted 15 of your scholarship recipients." Pause. Not one of them received a scholarship. Gasps rippled to the nearby tables. Edward stood abruptly. "What are you talking about?" Clara swiped a photo. "This is Marcus Johnson, who supposedly received $15,000 in 2021 to attend Morehouse." She turned the phone to show the room. "Except Marcus Johnson is actually Tyler Chin, a student in Los Angeles who's never even heard your foundation. His photo was stolen from Instagram." She swiped again. "Jasmine Williams? Stolen photo. David Rodriguez? Stolen photo. All 32 recipients. Fake names attached to stolen photos of real students who received nothing." "That's impossible," Becky started. "But the money is real," Clara continued, her voice rising with prosecutorial precision. "Donations pour in every year. Corporate sponsors, private donors, charity galas. $450,000 annually on average. So where does it go? She pulled up wire transfer documents to offshore accounts in the Cayman Islands. And from there, she zoomed in on account details to a personal account in the name Rebecca Sutton. Her eyes locked on Becky. Your maiden name. Edward grabbed Clara's phone, his hands shaking as he stared at the screen. His face transformed, confusion melting into horror, horror hardening into rage. Becky, what is this? Edward, she's lying. She's clearly making this up. These are official bank records, Clara said calmly. Wire transfer confirmations, account statements. I've already filed reports with the IRS Criminal Investigation Division and the Georgia Attorney General's office. Case numbers are included. Her voice took on the tone of a closing argument, every word precise and devastating. Tax fraud, embezzlement, wire fraud, identity theft, using your husband's name and reputation to steal from the very communities you claim to help. Those are multiple federal felonies. Mrs. Bryant. She paused, let it sink in. Oh, and about those accusations you just made against me? Marcus stepped forward, phone now visible in his hand. I've been recording this entire conversation, he announced to the room, including Mrs. Bryant's accusations, her threats, and... He tapped his screen, playback audio. Becky's voice, captured a moment before, crystal clear. These people are all the same. Can't trust them near anything valuable. The racist statement she muttered under her breath, thinking no one would hear, now played for the entire restaurant. Undeniable. In the stunned silence that followed, something fell. A metallic clink against marble. Everyone looked down. There, sparkling under the chandelier light, was Becky's diamond bracelet. It had tumbled from her purse when she'd frantically reached for her phone, desperate to call someone, anyone who could make this nightmare stop. It was never missing. It was never stolen. The accusation was a lie from the start. Becky's face crumbled. All the smugness, all the confidence, all the power, gone in an instant. She reached desperately for Edward. Edward, please, let me explain. He pulled away like she'd burned him. Don't touch me. His voice shook with fury. 5 years. 5 years you've been doing this? Stealing from children? Using my name. Around them, other diners stood, phones out, recording. This was Atlanta society. Everyone knew everyone. By tomorrow morning, this would be everywhere. Social media, news outlets, whispered conversations in every country club and charity gala in the state. Becky's carefully constructed image disintegrated in real time, not gradually, but completely, like a house of cards in a wind tunnel. She looked around desperately, searching for allies, for someone who might defend her. She found only disgusted faces, recording phones, whispered judgments. Edward Bryant stood tall, removed his wedding ring with deliberate precision, and placed it on the table. We're done, Becky, he said quietly but firmly. My lawyers will contact you tomorrow. He turned to Clara. Miss James. Clara James. Miss James, I'll cooperate fully with any investigation. His voice cracked slightly. I should have seen what she was doing to your staff. I'm sorry. Becky tried one last time, her voice desperate and shrill. You'll regret this. All of you. You'll do nothing, Clara said firmly. You have no power here anymore. The only thing you'll be doing is answering to federal investigators. Becky looked around one final time, at the staff she'd terrorized, at the diners witnessing her fall, at the husband who'd finally seen her for what she was. Then, with whatever shred of dignity she had left, she walked toward the door. The restaurant watched in silence as Becky Bryant left the Belmont Club for the last time. Then, something unexpected happened. Applause. It started with Marcus, slow and deliberate. Then it spread through the staff, servers, busboys, the kitchen crew emerging to watch. Then the diners joined in, people who'd witnessed a tyranny, who'd stayed silent out of fear or discomfort. Clara stood in the center of it all, overwhelmed. Mr. Hutchins approached, his eyes glistening. Miss James, I don't know what to say. The truth needed to be told, Clara said simply. I just made sure it was heard. 2 weeks later, Clara received 3 job offers from major Atlanta law firms. Impressive positions, prestigious titles, lucrative salaries. She declined them all. Instead, she used her evidence, her newfound reputation, and her understanding of what really mattered to launch the James Advocacy Group, a legal aid organization for service workers facing discrimination, pro bono representation for those who couldn't afford to fight back. Edward Bryant became her first major donor, $500,000 to launch the organization. It's what the foundation money should have done, he told her quietly. His divorce from Becky was finalized within 3 months. He restructured his charitable giving completely, adding oversight, demanding transparency, actually helping the communities his ex-wife had exploited. News spread through Atlanta's restaurant industry like wildfire. Other workers started coming forward with their own stories, not just about Becky, but about the culture of silent tolerance that enabled people like her. Clara's organization took on case after case. Discrimination, wage theft, harassment, using the law to protect those who've been taught to stay quiet. 6 months later, Clara returned to the Belmont, not as a waitress, but as a guest. Marcus served her table, wearing his biggest smile. "Look at you," he said proudly. "Attorney James. Couldn't have done it without you," she reminded him. They shared a moment of understanding. 2 people who'd refused to stay silent when silence would have been easier. At her office, Clara addressed a group of service workers seeking help. "Bullies rely on our silence. On our fear of losing jobs, we need to survive. But when we document, when we speak up, when we stand together, we're not just employees. We're witnesses. We're evidence. We're powerful." She looked around at faces showing hope, determination, recognition. Real power isn't about money or status. It's about having the courage to say enough and meaning it. The story ends where it began, with power, but this time, power in the right hands. Becky Bryant faced federal charges, social exile, complete ruin, not because someone was wealthier or more connected, but because someone was more courageous. Clara James didn't just stand up to a bully. She reminded everyone watching that dignity isn't given by the powerful, it's claimed by the brave. And sometimes, all it takes is one person refusing to be afraid. One voice saying, "No more." Clara refused to stay silent when it mattered most. Now it's your turn to speak up, but in a different way. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that one voice can change everything, then use your voice right now. Hit that like button, drop a comment telling us where you're watching from, or share a time when you stood up for what was right, or wish you had. And subscribe to Gadgula Stories, because every week, we bring you true stories about ordinary people who did extraordinary things. People who refused to be silent. People who chose courage over comfort. Because here's the truth. Bullies, whether in restaurants, workplaces, or anywhere else, count on good people staying quiet. Don't give them that power. Engage with this story. Share it. Let it reach someone who needs to hear it today. Your comment, your like, your subscription, it's not just engagement. It's you saying, "I see this, I hear this, and I stand with people like Clara." So don't just watch and leave. Be part of the story. Comment below right now. We read every single one. And remember, that person who changes everything, it could be anyone. It could even be you.